Good afternoon, everyone. This is Christian with PerfectStockAlert.com, a 100% free service for smart investors and traders. All we ask in return, please refer a friend. Today is Thursday. It's October the 18th, 2012, and as of today, I am officially bearish again, and that's been a while since we've done that again, so let's look at this. Starting off looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We've been watching this one for some kind of a sign, whether we're going to go, back into the bullish mode or the bearish mode. This really has been a story that's been developing for the past few weeks. The longer term charts have already shown a breakdown of the uptrend on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, as well as one other U.S. major market chart. So this is something we've been watching. We've also had the short-term close here on the short-term chart, meaning that this is 3-month daily chart, and a high point here, and this close indicating an uptrend here. The same time period, low point here, lower low here, it's downtrend here. So we've been getting conflicting signals. We wanted to see what the next bounce brought us, so we didn't actually buy this scenario. We also didn't have any shooting star signals here, and we also told you when that was happening that you can get reversal signals like this. Basically, it's just a inverted hammer at the bottom of a pattern. It calls for a bounce, but it can also be an early warning that you're about to start breaking down these support lines here. So that's important to note as well. Then we get this little move to the upside when we get yesterday's activity was a hanging man candlestick formation, again not showing any strength there. And then today's activity, intraday, we had a shooting star signal. And that's something that's very important to me. It gives me my timing signal, and also the fact that we had that next to the one we had over here and the one we had over here and here and here. This is very important. You got a major sell pressure at this level, and that was very important. However, the intraday activity is not as important as the end of day activity, and the end of day activity kind of sucked that up a little bit more, and we ended up not forming that shooting star signal here. And in fact, if you look at today's high point, let me clean this up. Today's high point compared to yesterday's, it is higher. You can see yesterday's high point, today's high point higher. You can also notice that the low point, yesterday's low point, today's low point higher. So we're still in that little uptrend there, and we haven't actually broken over yet. So I've marked it as I would start selling this if we started to see a lower series of lows from one day to the next. Even if you break it out by a single penny to the downside intraday, I'd start selling that. My stop right now would be off of this high point here, and this is very logical, and that the 1 cent above that high, because you're looking at this being the high point that we're analyzing this chart from, and then if we get a lower series of high points, then we will have a situation where we have a downtrend on the high points and a downtrend on the low points. That would mean the trend has changed from the uptrend to the downtrend, and you want to, of course, be selling in that scenario. So that's why it's drawn like that. You also notice the ultimate oscillator pulls up here to the 70 line. Typically that's where you get the overbought conditions, and that's where you start to see your peaks and so forth and so on. You can notice that you get up there at that point here, and that begins to be a great opportunity to look for sell signals. I am there again, very bearish in this particular situation. One last item I want to point out here on this particular chart trading activity here on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Tomorrow is Friday. If you have a sell-off on Friday, it even pulls back to this point here, you're going to be forming a shooting star signal on the longer term chart. So let me go quickly show you the longer term charts, because that's very important, because that's the element we've been missing on longer term charts. Okay, this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average chart for the past 2 years. Each one of these candlesticks represents a single week's trading activity. That means that this current candlestick is still being formed because it's not the end of the week yet. Again, if we see a major sell-off, then of course we would pull back down here and form a shooting star signal, and that's the one element that we have been missing. You'll notice there's no shooting star up here. That again is something that we've talked about before. It helps with the timing. That's what basically tells us when to get short. Over here we were trading in this little bearish condition here, and we didn't get short even after we closed below this uptrend line here. We wanted to see a shooting star. We got that on the following bounce right here, and that was a great short opportunity. Right here we've been noticing that this little uptrend line has broken. We closed below that line last week, then we moved back up here, and we still didn't get short because we haven't seen that shooting star signal, even though we are expecting to see one develop. It hasn't happened yet. Another thing to point out with this overall chart pattern here, you can see this high close here and this high close here. You're trending up like this. The corresponding time period and ultimate oscillator here is trending down. It's bearish divergence telling you this rally to the upside is unsustainable. Eventually it will fall apart. So that's an important little key element to note as well. This is a very bearish chart. It's developing, but it's still early comparative to all the other charts that we have out there globally. You can still see a lot of very bullish patterns out there, and that's something to keep in mind whenever you're looking at this. If you're going to start shorting, start doing it in small increments. Wait for the charts to confirm what you're seeing before you really get involved heavily. Looking now at the NASDAQ, probably the last chart I'll show you for today. This one, of course, is going to be something I would sell immediately. And this is the way I've drawn this chart. You can see that we have this, we talked about before, this potential inverse, head and shoulders pattern. I'm calling it a top here. And that actually confirmed when it closed below the neckline here. We've been watching this. We actually traded this to the upside on this little hammer candlestick formation. It bounced to the upside here. And then we got stopped out as of today. If we take and look at this overall pattern, we can see that we have this situation going on where you had the nice little 50-period moving average where you find support whenever you're in a bullish uptrend. However, that may have changed because you're no longer looking at a bullish uptrend. When you look at a head and shoulders formation, it's basically saying this is the top, look for it to break down. At that point, you start closing below the 50-period moving average and finding resistance at the 50-period moving average. Therefore, it looks like a smart trade to me. Also good volume to the downside, even though a lot of that was a Google issue. Keep that in mind that it's still setting up on a bearish downtrend. You have a series of lower highs, high point here, lower high here, potential lower high here, low point here, lower low here, lower low here. You should be looking to trade this with the trend, not against it. You also notice if we clean that up and move up here to the ultimate oscillator, you can see that you are now over the 50 line. That's what we talked about before. Whenever we were starting with this move to the upside, if we get a nice bounce here, we look for a short opportunity, potentially, if we don't see any strength or something of that nature to change our minds, we would look for a short opportunity once the ultimate oscillator had risen above the 50 line or above the 50 point. That's where you start to look for a shortened opportunity. So if you were looking at it from the perspective of the ultimate oscillator, if you're looking at it from a perspective of a series of lower highs and lower lows, you have that. If you're looking at a perspective of bounce off the lower Bollinger Band line, find resistance at the middle Bollinger Band line, that would make sense as well. There's just many different ways you could look at this, but all of them are bearish, and so I would actually be shorting this one now. It's already showing us a lower series of highs from one day to the next, and a lower series of lows from one day to the next. We're out of the long position. We talked about that yesterday, and now we're looking on the short side. One more item to draw your attention to. You will notice that the past 4 days represent a week's of trading activity, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So our actual longer term chart will show this low point here is the start of the candlestick formation. We move up here to a high, and now we pull back down and erase 50% of that move. Any lower, and you're going to get a very clearly defined shooting star signal on the longer term chart, and that's again very, very important to us that we've been looking for. One more quick little item, and I believe I covered this yesterday, but just in case I didn't, you've got this high close here and this lower close here. It's trending down, same time period, and a corresponding ultimate oscillator on the corresponding time period. You can see the high point here, higher high here. This is a divergence. It's 104. It's a negative reversal divergence. Basically, it's showing momentum is indicating higher highs, but there's so much sell pressure on this chart, it can't do it with price activity. It's got to sell off, and that's what's going on right now. I guess somebody's going to ask me where my stop loss limit is going to be at, so let me show you where I drew this one. It's a little bit different than a typical pattern. Note this high point here and this high point here. You can see the little downtrend line right here. You can see that we haven't actually reached that downtrend line, so we could still see some bouncing around activity while the ultimate oscillator gets up there in the overbought condition of the 70 line. Some different things can happen here. So I've backed my stop loss limit off, and I've put it way up here at the previous high point. That makes sense to me because if you're actually going to remain bearish, you wouldn't take out a previous high, so that would be an easier way to set a stop without being stopped out just because you're wiggling around near the 50-period moving average looking for direction before you actually end up going lower. So that's why I would set that way. Those of you guys who don't like that, what you would do is be shorting here with a stop set right here. Okay, that represents the only two charts that I'd be beginning to take short positions on within the U.S. here. I know the S&P is also on my watch list and very interested in that because we've already talked about the longer term chart there. Has broken below the bullish uptrend line, so that would be the next one probably to fall on my list. If I was looking for more bearish opportunities, we've already had hanging man candlestick formation as of today, so these are not strong signs, but I just want to leg into the short position here. Don't be real quick to jump on there, because I do know that we'll be fighting the Fed and attempting to short this market here. If you've not been to the free website at perfectstockalert.com, it's right there. It's 100% free, and all we ask in return, please refer a friend. As always, these charts are updated every single day and kept on our free website there. You can check them out whenever you like. We will be adding long-term charts for you guys as well. God bless, take care, I'll see you in the next one. Please take a moment to review our disclaimer. The information provided herein is our opinion only. Under no circumstances do any statements here represent a recommendation to buy or sell securities or make any kind of an investment. You are responsible for your own due diligence. To summarize, we do not provide investment advice, nor do we make any claims or promises that any information here will lead to a profit, loss, or any other result. These videos are for educational purposes only.